Hello everybody and welcome to Martian Peace Theater. I of course am your host, the Starving Martian, and today we're going to be looking at Mars Attacks Image. This is a four-part miniseries published in 1997 by Image Comics. As of yet, it has not been collected in any trade edition, nor do I expect it to. But back in the 90s, that was the heyday for Image Comics. And they had some characters who people still recognize. On the cover here, you see Spawn on top, looking all spawny. You see this lady from Gen 13. Pardon me, I don't know her name. And you see the Savage Dragon, and this little guy down here who wishes he was Wolverine. I know very, very little about Image Comics. When I was growing up reading comics in the 90s, I was mostly a DC kind of guy with occasional Spider-Man tossed in for variety. I had one issue of Gen 13 because I liked the cover, and less said about that the better. And I knew Spawn from the Spawn Batman crossovers, which were horrible, but fun in their own right. Plus, back in the 90s, you knew Spawn. There was no getting away from Spawn. If you went to the comic book shops, you saw Spawn. Savage Dragon, I knew by reputation. I know that he's a character that exists, and that's about it. But you don't really need to know their characters to get into this story, because the story doesn't bother showing off any of these characters anyway, except for Savage Dragon here. Everybody else gets more or less cameos. We don't have time for characters that you might actually know. No, we got to show off Killcat and his partner, Kid Avenger. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother issue. We're going to get into that in just a second. But Mars Attacks Image. Issue number 1, I highly recommend. I very much enjoy issue number 1. If you are a Mars Attacks fan, you will enjoy issue number 1 of Mars Attacks Image, regardless of whether or not you know anybody in the Image universe. Because the writers and artists of Mars Attacks Image knew their Mars Attacks trading cards. Right here we have a very nice update of The Invasion Begins, the very first card in the series. And, you turn this page and you're like, alright, this is awesome. This is good. The story goes that the Martians are concerned about Earthlings, about their advanced technologies, their ability to travel to Mars, and the fact that superhumans are springing up on Earth. They figure if we don't invade now, we might never have another chance. They might come and invade us, so it's a preemptive strike. We're going to wipe out all the Earthlings. It's good enough reason as any. Yeah. And again, being a Mars Attacks fan, you will notice several panels throughout, especially in this first issue, that mimic actual cards from the series. There's Destroying Our Jets down there. There's Washington in Flames. And so there's a lot to like about this first issue. And here we briefly see members of Gen 13. We see Spawn, enough to justify putting them on the covers. We even have a poster in the middle for the Tim Burton movie. And okay, over here we meet Super Patriots, a super lame name, but he's going to be one of the main characters, so get to know him. He's too patriotic for his shirt, I suppose. And one of my favorite panels in the entire book, down here, Raphael helping to recreate destroying a dog. That's the only thing, by the way, that the Ninja Turtles do in this series. Oh yeah, the Ninja Turtles were owned by Image at this time. And that's not usually considered one of the high points of their career. So issue number 1, really good issue. Get your hopes up. things start to falter almost immediately. Issue number 2, you get a shot of Witchblade there, who I only recently realized that her name is actually a play on the word switchblade. Go figure. She barely factors into the story. They just put her there because she's one of the more well-known characters, and she doesn't wear clothing, so that's gonna attract sales as well. And so issue number 2 just continues the invasion. Things go from bad to worse. So one concept I kind of like, all these saucers, these flying saucers, link up together in Detroit to form like a Martian super city. That's kind of cool. And here we're introduced to Killcat, who desperately wants to be Batman. But then, don't we all? He's going to be one of our main heroes, so get to know him, get to love him, or don't, This is Kid Avenger. He has the superpower of being the most annoying thing you've ever met. Oh, and while we're desperately wanting to be other people, here's someone who desperately wants to be Rogue. Because if you can't be Batman, you want to be Rogue, I suppose. That's just how it goes. There's a poster in here as well of the cover of issue number 1. So if you really like the cover of issue number 1 and you want it hanging up in your room, there's that. We're also introduced to Mighty Man. This is why I never got into Image Comics. You cannot come up with lamer names than these characters have. When I'm reading a comic book, I'm looking for imagination. I'm looking for creativity. And if you can't come up with a better name for your character than Mighty Man. Now, some would argue that Superman is not that original a name either, but he gets off lightly on that for being the first superhero, and for really setting the pace. Here we have the Max. You might recognize as being a character that people actually know and care about. And that's all he ever does. Show up, say hi. Because we need to see more Killcat. Issue number 3 has a really nice cover. Again, trying to trick you into thinking that characters like the Max and Spawn actually mean anything in this. Oh, and where'd he go? There's the Human Torch, for some reason. And issue number 3 is, well, it's more of the same. It's characters you don't know hammering on stuff at random. Fires in the background. One thing about issue number 3 is we finally get the gang together who is going to actually do the heroics, who's going to come in and save the day in the next issue. And that's, of course, our friend Killcat with the Kid Avenger and the children of Super Patriot. Here they are up there. Apparently he's got a son and a daughter named, Liberty. That's her, and he's Justice. So Justice and Liberty. And they're going to come into play later on. So they go to the Detroit Super Center. They sneak in through the Martian sewers. And so that's the first time we get any indication that Martians poo, because they're covered in it. And that sums up this comic about right. Covered in Martian poo. And issue number 4. Now this issue is where I have, issues with the story. Now you look at the cover here, obviously somebody's read Crisis on Infinite Earths. First of all, the cover assumes that you know and or care about either of these people. If your sole introduction to them has been through this series, you don't. If you know them from something else, that's fine for you, I suppose, but I do not know either of these people. I don't care. And you assume that she's dead, by the way, especially if you've read Crisis on Infinite Earths. Where Supergirl is being held in much the same position. Let me just say, Supergirl actually gets off easy by comparison. So when we get into issue number 4, let's see where we are. Savage Dragon, by the way, has disappeared somewhere in issue number 3. He actually went off to be in his own miniseries, Mars Attacks Savage Dragon, which is actually really good. I'll cover that on its own someday. Okay, so we get into issue number 4. The Martians come and they capture our heroes, and they take Liberty away, separate from the group, and they proceed to rape her multiple times. There's just no sugarcoating this. And that's her face while she's being raped, in case you were interested. And when I say rape, I mean that's... Okay, in the last book I covered, Mars Attacks Classics Volume 2, I said that story got a little bit rapey, where the Martians wanted to impregnate females, but they do it through artificial means. It's clearly depicted that in that story, Martians look at humans as little more than somewhat intelligent animals. They do experiments on us as we would do on chimpanzees or gorillas. Doesn't make it right, but there's a level of disconnect. They're not getting any pleasure out of what they're doing. These guys here, on the other hand, they're just lining up to have sex with this restrained female, and for me, that just ruins the entire experience. We're coming to see the Martians, okay? Even though they're the bad guys of the story, they're the draw. They're the characters that we want to follow. They're the unique thing here. And to make them into flat-out rapists takes away from their character, makes it impossible to sympathize with their cause, makes it impossible to pick favorites. This, to me, just goes a level too far. It may just be me. I hope not. Oh, by the way, Savage Dragon, his cards don't suck. Says so himself. Oh, and here's the U.S. Male. He's an idiot. He died protecting the Declaration of Independence, as if there's not a million copies of that in the world. So, the Martians get their comeuppance, and in a show of just how disconnected this comic is from reality, okay, the Liberty and Justice escape, and there he wraps her up to give her a bit of modesty. Now look at those eyes. This is a woman who's never going to be right again for the rest of her life. We get that, and the very next page, we get Killcat and his friend here playing Itchy and Scratchy. I don't know. But the Martians are defeated. They go back home, only to find their home has been trashed by the Savage Dragon. How'd that happen? I don't know. Well, actually, I do, because I've read the Savage Dragon Mars Attacks crossover. The funny thing is that never, not once in the series do they say that there is a Savage Dragon Mars Attacks crossover. There's not even an ad for it. It's amazing. But anyway, that is a much better crossover. It is collected in Mars Attacks Classics Volume 3. And we're going to cover all that in its own time. But that's all the time I have for now. Mars Attacks Image, if you are an extreme Mars Attacks fan, pick it up. If you like Mars Attacks, at least get issue number 1. Otherwise, this is bottom of the barrel, guys. This is my least favorite Mars Attacks anything. It's stupid, it's pointless, it's vulgar, it is what it is. Alright, well, this has been the Starving Martian. We'll catch you next time. Toodles, and watch the sky.